Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'm hosting tonight's show. There's a winter storm warning out here for misty fjords for 6 inches of snow tonight, accompanied by northeast winds gusting as high as 45 miles per hour. Of course, that's going to reduce the visibilities in those windiest areas, and that's out tonight into tomorrow, and then warmer air spreading in should change much of that area to rain, except for around Hyder, which could pick up another 6 to 9 inches on top of what you get tonight and tomorrow into tomorrow evening. And there's also a dense fog advisory out for the Anchorage area, the greater Anchorage area here, which could extend all the way up to Knik Arm, possibly even into the valleys and down Turnagain Arm as well. For low clouds, fog, visibility is reduced to a quarter mile at times. That's out tonight through noon tomorrow. And keep continuing on, yesterday, not too bad here. We had one disturbance moving out of the southern southeast coast. Not too bad in the afternoon and evening hours, but you can see down here the gathering clouds in the next system starting to make a push to the north there in the last couple of frames. Disturbance here crossing the Arctic coast, that's still up there, not moving really fast, and a couple of frontal boundaries out to the west really kind of stuck due to high pressure in over the Bering Sea. And today they're still out there, kind of merged together. You've got easterly flow here, kind of pushing them back to the west around high pressure all through this area. Clear and cold over the interior. Afternoon temperatures a little warmer than 40 below zero, both at Fort Yukon and over at Bettles. I think Fort Yukon was 38 below, Bettles was minus 35 at 3 p.m. this afternoon. A little milder up along the Arctic coast, got some clouds and flurries going on up there. A trough right about through the central area with southwest breezes on the eastern coast and northwest breezes back to the west, kind of signifying the trough axis there in between the two wind flows. Meanwhile, we've got this massive area of moisture you can see lifting northward. That's colliding with the strong Arctic outflow coming out of Canada that's been going on for, well, at least started on Saturday or late Friday. Anyway, snow spreading over the southern southeast coast late this afternoon, continuing to push northward here, and the frontal boundary off to the southeast. On the chart, strong high pressure here over western Canada, gusty northeast winds continuing. That's pulling that cold air out and then undercutting or overrunning the moisture coming up from the south. And again, the fog around the Anchorage area this morning up toward Knik Arm on down into northern Cook Inlet, and clear and cold over the interior, trough with a little bit of flurry conditions up along the Arctic coast due to high pressure that's farther back to the west, and that flow around that kind of circulating that stuff. Now it's going to kind of move off to the east and southeast and dissipate, but won't go away completely, and probably will still be hanging around mostly through this area tomorrow. Otherwise, east flow, offshore flow here as well, not too bad out along the Bering Sea, and also over the southwest interior with frontal action still keeping it kind of breezy and damp out over the western to about the central Aleutians, Fox Island zone, Alaska Peninsula, as well as Bristol Bay looking pretty good. Kodiak on the edge is some moisture, this moisture streaming westward around that low center that's down off the chart there. Chance of rain and snow tonight in the forecast, and depicted something like this with a heavier precipitation just off to the west there, but look for winds swinging more east to southeast. That should change snow to rain, and moisture working northward, possibly getting to the, let's see, Sitka to Wrangell, Petersburg line, maybe a little to the north of that. Definitely snow, whatever gets up that far, and then a mixture changing over to rain with flurries up over the Arctic coast. Otherwise, pretty breezy conditions possible here. Passes of the Alaska Range, but no advisories out for those winds. And rain with a narrow band of rain to snow, or rain to snow, with snow creeping up mostly in Canada there. Look for an increase in the clouds and a chance of rain or a chance of snow late in the day up toward, say, Juneau. Maybe it looks like it may stay off the coast here from Yakutat along the North Gulf Coast, mostly dry, but it's getting awfully close and pushing wet north and northwest. So whatever starts out as snow, Kodiak Island, by sometime tomorrow will change over to rain, and then there'll be a narrow area here of mixed precipitation with that. But over the interior, looking really good. Still clear, cold conditions. VFR out along much of the coastline here with those northeast winds, but an area of lower flying ceilings. Marginal VFR, possibly down to IFR here, especially as you get up against the Alaska Range with that trough, really taking its time. But the high you can see shifting eastward a little bit and building up to 1,048 millibars. Meanwhile, out to the west, I've got a low center coming northward here along this frontal boundary, kind of breaking off of the parent low. Farther down to the south, now probably bring some gales, full gales, to possibly minimum storm force winds with it when it rolls up late tonight and tomorrow. And then that pulls off back to the west there and weakens. The front, just a weak trailing edge in over the western Aleutians, so really doesn't make much progress after tomorrow. And then this low center develops here over the southeast Bering with moisture pulling warmer air and moisture into Bristol Bay, so kind of a mixed precipitation pattern, wintry mix you could call it. Snow spreading over the the Kuskokwim Delta, increasing clouds over the southern Yukon Delta. Nunivak Island looks good for a chance of snow. Some of that trying to wrap back around and come in on the eastern Aleutians there. So chance of snow increases a little bit there for the Unalaska area on Wednesday and Wednesday afternoon. Nikolsky probably escaping that, and rain periods of possibly heavy at times. Kodiak Island as that frontal boundary stays right about in this position. And then another warm front here, kind of the Arctic boundary, high pressure redeveloping over northwest Canada, rising the center, rising up over 31 inches, 1,051 millibars. So that's going to tend to possibly increase the winds a little bit. So we've got this fluctuation of the Arctic boundary here. Of course, north, that's where you're going to have the mixed precipitation or just flat out snow. And of course, to the south, it's going to stay rain. Looks like the southern areas will be on the warm side of the front through Wednesday. Otherwise, it's looking a little brisk here along the Alaska Range. So places like Delta, east-southeast gusts 40, say 45, and breezy conditions all the way over toward Healy, Nenana, and higher elevations at interior Alaska, seeing some gusty winds. Otherwise, just some variable clouds rolling through, mostly through this area, and then an increase in the moisture down over the southwest part of the state, especially Bristol Bay down across the peninsula. Temperatures this afternoon range from the mid-teens around Skagway, otherwise down into the 20s to lower 30s. The warmest locations where the snow's falling, they're at Kawak, 32 degrees, 20 degrees Cordova, minus 17 this afternoon at Gulkana and Talkeetna, 13 below zero, Anchorage at 11, Kenai 10 above, 27 in Homer, lower to mid 30s here for Kodiak Island. Up in the valleys, markedly colder, minus 23 at Fairbanks, Tanana 29 below, and minus 35 at Battles. But Anatuvik came in with 0, minus 38 over at Fort Yukon, as I mentioned earlier, in Arctic Village, right around 30 below. And these are all 3 p.m. temperatures. Single numbers in the eastern Arctic coast, teens back to the west with the clouds and flurries, a little milder there, and then back down into the colder temperatures. Ambler at -15, -6 at Selkirk, but 9 above at Kotzebue. About the same down in Nome, with 18s both at Unalakleet and St. Michael, 17 degrees at St. Mary's, 1 above at Sleetmute, but McGrath just 21 below zero, 7 above at Bethel, and 21 at Macoriac, 30 degrees at Gamble, and 33, a shade above freezing at both St. Paul and St. George, and temperatures right around 40, upper 30s, lower 40s for the Aleutians. And lows tonight, anywhere from 25 to, say, 45 below zero, excuse me, with the coldest readings over the Yukon Flats, and then on down toward Tok and Northway, with Copper River Basin down to 30 below, say, at Gulkana possible, and either side of zero here across southern Alaska, south central Alaska and toward Anchorage, even the Kenai Peninsula, but warming up, temperatures on the rise here over the southern southeast coast into the mid-30s, otherwise mid-20s to as low as the mid-teens over the north. And for the Alaska Peninsula, 16 to upper 20s with Bristol Bay in the single numbers, 28 for the Pribilofs, and lower 30s for the Aleutians. And then the highs tomorrow, not too much warmer. Some areas, a lot of areas here forecast below freezing with the above freezing temperatures down to the south. Still pretty chilly to the north with gusty northeast winds, and teens to lower 20s south of the Alaska Range, and mostly below zero to the north, but some areas coming above zero, back into the teens here over the northwest part of the state, and then upper 20s for St. Lawrence Island, and also for the southwest coast. 35, the forecast high for St. Paul, upper 30s to lower 40s for the Aleutians. And with that trough up there on the north, marginal VFR, could be IFR, especially early on, but this whole pattern moving slowly, inching its way eastward and southward. So the two passes, Anaktuvuk and Adigan, starting out marginal and then becoming VFR into the afternoon. IFR possible here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Marginal VFR, areas of all the way out to Shimia, get into more of an IFR out there. And for the coast, this area coming northward, I kind of held it south of the area for the 3 p.m. location tomorrow, but this may spread on up and cover the entire, all the way up to the passes with marginal VFR. So look for the conditions to trend down, and especially as you go south, they'll be trending down sooner. For passes, Anaktuvuk, marginal VFR becoming VFR, and also same forecast for Adigan, lowest conditions in the morning, and then improving Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR throughout the day, as well as rainy, windy, and the eastern Alaska Range passes, both Isabel and Mentasta, will stay VFR. Tanita staying VFR, and Portage, if any low stuff off the inlet, or off, Turnagain Arm develops on the west side, or even over Passage Canal, that could make for something less than VFR, but I'll keep it VFR. And then for the Chilkoot and White, VFR to start with, but then gradually coming down throughout the day, ceilings and then visibilities, possibly going marginal VFR in the late afternoon, if not sooner. And freezing levels showing the big push of warm air up to the north and northwest here, following that retreating Arctic front back to the northwest. At the surface again, hugging the coastline, and freezing levels below 2,000 feet, even over the Aleutians, but some warmer air just to the south. Icing threats with that system coming northward, say from the freezing level to 10,000 feet, could be an area of moderate rime icing out there coming across the far western Aleutians, otherwise pretty icing free everywhere else. Maybe some around Kodiak Island with the moisture rolling in there, and especially to the southern southeast coast could be some moderate rime icing or light to isolated moderate rime all the way up to 14,000 feet. And upper level wind flow chart, big high pressure area forecast tomorrow right over the eastern Bering Sea with a center there over the Russian Far East. So northerly flow, keeping it cool, keeping the cool air in, but then diving south and then back to the north with high pressure ridge over the western U.S. kind of ridging up like this. So that's going to drive that warmer air right on up at least through tomorrow, and then it kind of hits a equilibrium area there and for Wednesday, and may not make it all the way up to the northern southeast coast. at 3,000 or at 9,000 feet. Southeast 10 to 15 over the Panhandle. Stronger wind band here off the coast. Easterlies, northeasterlies 35. Kodiak Island, east-northeast 25 to 45 knots here, right through the central interior. Lighter back toward the Arctic coast, and northeast 35 across the Pribilofs. High pressure, southerly winds on the west side of that, up to 55 with that center coming up toward the western Aleutians. And that holds pretty windy into at 3,000 feet as well, with 40 to 50 knots out west, and then a band of 20 to 30 knot winds here cutting through the central interior, lighter to the south, and then picking up again with that low center along the North Gulf Coast, or easterly winds along the North Gulf Coast, 25 to as high as 40 knots there. Queen Charlotte's mostly west of Dixon Entrance and off the coast. And with that, again, the continued mechanical turbulence, occasional moderate chop, the entire stretch of the coastline here right up into the Wrangell Mountains, and Montague Island down along the Kenai Peninsula to Kodiak Island, and just catching the Aleutian Range there. And then a pretty good area with those northeast winds, occasional moderate chop anywhere in the turquoise shaded area here from St. Paul all the way back up in across the Koyukuk Valley. And after hangar flying, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Cornfield. On behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to another edition of Hangar Flying. My guest this evening is John Hartke. As a teenager, John worked at a small airport in exchange for flying lessons. He sold at 16, earned his commercial pilot's license and instrument rating at 18, then went on to spend time as a flight instructor during college. After college, he joined the Air Force and learned to fly F-16s, FA-18s, and the F-4 Phantom. He's also a veteran of Desert Storm. Thank you, John, for your service to our country. And after flying DC-6s for Everett's Air Cargo, John is now a pilot for Alaska Airlines. John is also a member and instructor for the Civil Air Patrol and Commemorative Air Force and flies some very interesting airplanes. He also owns a Cessna 170. Welcome to Hangar Flying, John.
Thank you, Ed.
So what got you interested in flying at such a young age?
Well, somewhere around when I was between 12 and 14, I don't exactly remember when, we lived near a number of airports in the Washington, D.C. area, and we'd see the commercial airliners flying as well as little civilian propeller airplanes. And it hit me that it was pretty amazing that they could stay up in the air. And wouldn't it be neat to just float up in the air and look down and see the lay of the land and that sort of thing. So that's where I started hanging around the airport and eventually got a job cutting grass, emptying the trash, putting gas in airplanes in exchange for flying lessons.
Good story. So tell us briefly about your Air Force career, aviation career in the Air Force.
Well, in the Air Force, I was very fortunate, first of all, to be a pilot and then to get to fly the aircraft that I was interested in flying, which was the F-16. I spent about 6 years flying that, and it's quite an amazing...
There's a picture coming up on the screen of the F-16. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quite an amazing aircraft from a performance perspective. I got to fly that all through the Far East, and then I was stationed in Spain and got to fly it around Europe. So spent 6 years doing that. A part of that was being the demonstration pilot while I was in Europe in the F-16. And the picture that you see of it there, it's in a lightweight configuration taking off at full power, and you don't realize that jets can do that, but in that configuration, it'd be under 1,000-foot takeoff roll, and light enough weight at full power, you'd climb out 60 to 70 degree climb immediately after takeoff, which is was neat to get used to. Then following that, I was fortunate to do an exchange tour with the Navy and the Marine Corps, flying the F-18. Where I participated in Desert Storm, and then flew the F-4 at the end of my career before getting out of the Air Force.
So what advice can you give young people who are considering a career as an aviator in the Air Force?
Well, back when I was in the Air Force, I was asked that quite a few times, and it always kind of made me smirk a little bit when the answer I have to tell the kids is, you know, you're not going to like to hear this, but you need to get good grades in school, stay in good physical shape, and probably do what your parents say is a good start. And believe it or not, that's probably the best way to get on that path, because it's the same type of things that they're looking at that when they're choosing people to get to do those high profile, high performance frontline jobs.
So you had some interesting experiences in the Air Force that I thought were really cool, landing on an aircraft carrier, and you said you did some at nighttime. So what's it like landing on an aircraft carrier at night? What do you have to be focused on? I mean, I imagine you have to have a tremendous focus.
Well, first of all, being in the Air Force, one of the jokes we used to tell is how hard can landing on an aircraft carrier be? Navy pilots do it. But it is rather intense, and it does take quite a bit of focus. And before you go out to the aircraft carrier, you do a lot of training. And for just shy of a month, we'd go out once or twice a night over land, flying at an airfield with a painted box on the runway the size of an aircraft carrier, and do 8 to 10 touch and go landings on that. And each one of those was critiqued by folks on the ground, and we'd come back afterwards and, okay, on this one you did this, this, and this, improve this, this, and this. And by the time you're done with doing that for a month, you're seeing things, and your skills are at a level that they certainly weren't before, or things that you don't realize. Then when you actually go out to the aircraft carrier, if you've ever been on one of those, it's a huge ship, similar to a cruise ship. But when you're flying around, coming in to land on it, it looks awfully small, you know, until you get up close to it, and then it gets big in a hurry. But it's just very intense and requires a fair amount of focus and concentration. And as long as you do that, you can handle it just fine.
Well, John, we're just about out of time for now, but I'd like to get you back on the program to finish your story. And folks, just a safety tip, Alaska's weather can be pretty severe, so it's never too soon to prepare your airplane tie-downs for the next winter storm. That means good quality tie-down ropes and external gust locks. Remember to use a soft bristle broom to sweep snow off your wings. And thanks for flying. Thanks for watching, and fly safe.
Okay, welcome back. Let's catch up here. And marine forecasts, east-northeast, 25 to 30 knots of small craft advisories here for the south coast. Even over the inside waters, basically small craft advisories from the north to northeast, and small craft advisories up the coastline. Then for Wednesday, not a lot of change here, becoming a little more easterly, but holding about 30 knots there in the south coast. Northeast, 25 knots. Northeast 30 knots, Frederick Sound, for example, and then northerlies, Stevens Passage on up. Could increase Wednesday over tomorrow back into the gale force areas with possible freezing spray, and small craft advisory northeasterlies with gusts to 40 knots or more here out of the bays. And for Cook Inlet, northeast 15 to 20, increasing to 30 knots across Kamishak Bay, that marine zone there, and Shelikof Strait. Also northeast at 30, small craft advisories here east side of Kodiak Island, on up into the western Gulf Coast, central Gulf Coast, northeast about 25, so not much difference, northeast 20, or with higher gusts possible in areas of Prince William Sound. That holds into Wednesday up there, and Cook Inlet 15 to 20 knots, strongest south of the Forelands. Go for small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay, and no change for Shelikof Strait, northeast 30. A little more easterly here for Kodiak, but still holding at 30 knots there right out of the east instead of the northeast. And then coming down 20 knots from the northeast here, Barren Islands up along the North Gulf Coast. And Bristol Bay, northeast 25, take a turn to the north and drop it down to 20 knots here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Back to northeast 20 on the Pacific side, and those increase to 30 knots as you approach Kodiak Island. And then for Wednesday, no change in that area from Sitkinak to about Chignik, northeast 30. Lighter northerlies here for the Alaska Peninsula, 15 to 20 knots. Looks like the strongest winds at this point in time will be on the Bering Sea side of things, and small craft advisories still for Bristol Bay. And small craft advisories also for 25 knot northeast winds for the Fox Islands out here tomorrow. and turning east, Adak and Atka a little lighter, and then that system coming north, 45 knots, pretty close to storm, but right now gales in the forecast there, and then those really drop off the following day on Wednesday, east coming down to 15, 25 knot-ish winds there for that zone, and then Adak and Atka northeast 20, 15 knot winds for the Fox Islands from the north to northwest. And the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, 25 knot winds, gales north of that, and then bring it down to 30 knots St. Lawrence Island, heavy freezing spray, and heavy freezing spray here all along the southwest coast, right down into Bristol Bay, Pribilofs northeast 25. And for Wednesday, freezing spray continues in these areas, heaviest up here around St. Lawrence Island, northeast 20 to 25 to 30 knots as you get up toward the northern Bering Sea, or actually that's the St. Lawrence Island zone, and small craft advisories everywhere else. Arctic coast, nothing heavy in the way of wind tomorrow with northwest 10 to 15 on the east side, central coast and the west side northeast 10 to 15, up to 20 knots from the northeast here coming around Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, and northeast 20 also down toward Kotzebue Sound and to the west. And for Wednesday, swinging around to the east up here, 15 to 20 knots, maybe a few higher gusts possible here on the east side, and kind of a light southeast drift there for the central coast, but these winds increasing northeast at about 15 here, picking up around the Capes there at about 20 knots, and from Cape Lisburne on up toward Point Hope or a little beyond, could see some 25 knot winds, and they drop back down as you head toward Wainwright and Barrow. And then on tonight, got some clouds and flurries going on up there, moving east and southeast, kind of banking up along the Brooks Range. Otherwise clear and cold here over the
These
interior,
forecasts
all the way
are
down
to be
into
used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.